Hello and welcome to this latest version of Rugby League Down South. On this week's offering, departing Broncos superstar Jamie SOWARD tells of his learning experience from being in London. As the London SKOLARS head for their first ever playoff game, we talk to the chief executive about where the Championship 1 club are possibly heading. And also, this week I go on the search of the country's best rugby league player, who supposedly could be found in North London one day this week. Find out if I found him and who it was. You can start guessing now later in the programme. But just before we go any further, to give you the latest news in terms of the Broncos for 2014 and what I know, the blog that I wrote about 3-4 weeks ago, oh no, it's about 2 weeks ago actually, still exists, still is relevant. We know nothing more. As far as I can tell, the talks and negotiations in terms of the deal are progressing. And I believe that things are looking good. I don't really know what the decision is or the plan is or what will happen. I know Tony Ray at the weekend after the victory over the Bradford Bulls said that he was hoping that something could be said in the next few days. I think sometimes, it's always difficult to tell, and I didn't really read too much into that. I wasn't expecting anything this week, but I think that any moment now, potentially, we could have news, but I couldn't put a time frame on it. I never would. I only go by what people told me, and they told me a couple of months ago. So we are waiting, but hopefully something will be sorted fairly soon in terms of the Broncos for 2014, but I can't add anything extra, nothing factual to this programme. But while we're on the subject of the Broncos, it was a win, wasn't it? Away at Bradford on Sunday. I was busy looking at the scores in the Championship as well as monitoring what was happening in Super League. The Broncos needed to win to avoid the possibility of being left with a wooden spoon for 2013. They've never finished on the bottom of the Super League table in all the years that they've been in it. So they'll want to avoid being given the wooden spoon for this year. And they've done that by beating Bradford, because Salford lost away at Castleford. An astonishing game there. Castleford raced into the lead. Salford got back into the lead. I think it was about 22-20 they got the game back to. But then Castleford ran away with it in the end, of course. Who else but Rangi Chase scoring a few tries. And this week, I'm recording this before Thursday's announcement for the Salford City Reds, but it looks like they're potentially going to announce that Rangi Chase is joining them for 2014, so exciting times ahead for them. But the way that it stands is on Friday, Salford will play Widnes. Salford need to lose. If they win, Broncos will end up with a wooden spoon. If the Salford don't win, then it goes to the final game on Sunday. Broncos away at Hull KR. A win there would mean that they do finish off the bottom of the league. They have a better points difference than the Salford side. I did tout the idea of Broncos drawing away at Hull KR. Every team in the league, except for Hull KR and Huddersfield, have had a draw so far this year. So I did go, I wonder whether... No, it can't. It won't, will it? Hopefully not. But I was mentioning the programme on Twitter this week. And on the subject of Twitter, you can always get in touch at Ian Ramsdale or use the hashtag RLDS. But talking about the programme this week, somebody said, I wonder if you can catch up with Jamie SOWARD on the programme this week. Well, do you know what? Great suggestion. He's going to play his final game, isn't he, for Broncos at the weekend. Then he's going to head back down under. His brief stay in London seems like he's learnt quite a lot. So I had a bit of a catch-up with him earlier on today, in fact. And I thought, obviously, we don't do too much editing or faffing around with this Rugby League Down South podcast. It's fairly raw, always has been all year. And so this was the moment that I called the Broncos press officer, Steve Devonshire. Called him because I was doing the interview on his phone, and then he was going to hand me over to Jamie SOWARD. So this is kind of a behind-the-scenes look at quite how it all unfolded. My chat with Jamie SOWARD with some incredibly long questions at times, but there you go, that's just my style. And a really nice chat. Apologies for the sound quality on this. Jamie was standing on the training pitch at the time in the wind, and the reception isn't great down at Roehampton either, so it's not great quality, but have a listen. It's some good stuff here from Jamie SOWARD, who'll play his final game for Broncos this weekend before heading down under. He's been a credit to the club, hasn't he? Here he is, Jamie SOWARD.
Can you hear me yet?
Hello?
Steve, it's Ramo.
Good. Yeah, I've got Soward right here now, if you're ready.
Brilliant, mate. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. He's got a couple of guests with him as well.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Stick him on.
You'll find out. All right, cool.
All right.
G'day Ian, how you going?
Very well, thank you. Jamie, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Just got a couple of managers with me.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, Ramo.
Who have you got there?
Just a couple of new boys, mate.
Ramo, it's Arch and Bish.
Hello, guys.
Hey.
Has it been a good week this week?
Yes.
Yeah, it's been great, mate. We just finished training today, so boys, we're just talking about the last week in England.
So this is your final week then, is it?
Yeah, it is, mate. Yeah, I'll have a few beers with the boys on Monday, and move on after that. I'm going on a holiday in Mr. So looking forward to winning this weekend, hopefully.
How important was that win against Bradford at the weekend? It seems to have really lifted spirits.
Very.
Yeah, mate, it was good. I think it started the whole week. You know, we had a great week of training, and the boys came out and put in a really good effort. And, everyone played an 8 out of 10, so it was important that we try and get off the bottom of the ladder, and we needed to win, and we can still do that.
Asagi and Bichet always this annoying?
Mate, yeah, I've actually I've grown. I've sort of that's me click really, because these boys sort of took me under their wing day one, and I've been able to sort of I guess hang on to them at training and bounce around with them, which has been great.
Have you had fun over here?
Mate, I've had a ball. Yeah, I've really had a ball. I think the less I guess attention on the game down here in London in regards to media has really helped. The fishbowl effect in Sydney's pretty bad, so I've enjoyed that thing. But like I said, you know, hanging around these jokers, it's been really, really fun, and looking forward to, like I said, you know, winning this week and finishing the year off on the right note.
So how much have you enjoyed not being in the limelight, so to speak?
Yeah, I've enjoyed it immensely. I think, you know, apart from, you know, wanting to be back in the NRL and playing for Penrith, which is something that I've, you know, been looking forward to all year, I've had the chance to come over here and really enjoy the boys' company and, you know, get a different side of life, I guess, recharge the batteries and head back to Penrith fresh and ready to go.
Do you think you'll be any sort of a different person or a different player when you go back down under? I mean, have you learnt anything here, or has it just been reaffirmed what you already knew?
Yeah, I think yeah, I've had to think about that, and probably the leadership side of things I've been a bit more relied upon over here straight away, and I've had to sort of step up and fill that void of you know, being in the halves and being able to tell people what to do, and the boys have been great with that. You know, the forwards have really taken it on board, and they do their job, and that's sort of made my life easier. And yeah, I can take that back to the NRL because I'm going into a squad which is going to be similar amount of age and stuff like that. So I'm going to have to really step up and, you know, bring my leadership qualities, but also keep learning myself and realise that, you know, sometimes it's probably better for me to listen instead of, I guess, think I'm always right, which is I've done that in the past.
It just seemed like as soon as you arrived, I remember talking to you after that first game, bleary-eyed. You just landed off the plane from Australia straight into play. You said, I've come here to play, this is what I'm going to do. You know, you're here to win. You weren't happy because the side had lost that game. But immediately you took on a responsible role. Have you felt like you've had extra responsibility here?
Yeah, I have, but it was important for me to realise that the guys had done a full pre-season together and they had systems in place. So in that sense, you know, the boys have been great and letting me sort of come in and, I guess, run the team. And Tony's been really helpful as well. You know, I can't thank him enough for firstly getting me over here, but, you know, also, like you said, giving me the responsibility of running the team and letting me bounce ideas and stuff like that. And, that's important to have, and especially as something I've learned. You know, you've got to be able to have a close relationship with the coach and be able to bounce ideas, and it's a relationship. You've got to sort of give and take, you know. It's not all about taking and it's not all about giving. So from that point of view, you know, I've learned some life experiences over here that looking forward to taking back to Penrith.
And as well, you know, having your time over here, I think I can gamble and say you haven't won as many games as you'd have liked to have done. What was it like at Bradford when you won at the weekend?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, after Wigan, it was really disappointing to go out and be embarrassed on national TV. And, you know, a lot of credit needs to go to the people at the club. We all really stuck together after that, and we had a good performance against Leeds. We had a good one against Huddersfield, and we'd been building to it. So to go out there, and the boys are really excited, and anyone at the game will tell you that it's probably the most energetic we've been all year. So we want to finish the year off and get off the bottom of the ladder, and I think hopefully we can do us a favour Friday night, and we'll go into that game on Sunday, with a chance to get off the bottom.
It's very windy where you are, Jamie. You out on the training field?
Sorry, mate. Yeah, I am. I'll turn around. Steve.
No, it's all right. Guess you want to keep your eye on things, especially with Bichet and Sarge. You're not too far away.
Mate. Yeah, honestly, they're two top blokes. I didn't realise how young they were, and I remember that first day after the game, I didn't know if they were old enough to have a beer or not. But they're all good guys here, and like I said, I've sort of gravitated more towards those two. And, a guy like Tommy Lee, I'm really loved playing with. So loved playing with everyone, but those guys, definitely a little bit more because you're probably a bit more mossy.
I mentioned on Twitter that I was going to be chatting to you, and did anybody have any questions? I'll just get my phone out now. I'll have a look at who sent me the question. But they were wondering what you've made of all the youngsters at the club. I guess you see that week in, week out, even though maybe the performances aren't as good as people might hope, there's even more youngsters coming through. And it was Nigel that said, what do you make of James Woodburn, Hall, Mason Caton Brown, Kieran Dixon, Erjan Delappy, Mike McMeekan? I mean, the list goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and a lot of those guys are all on 21, 22. That's, obviously the stuff in the papers about the future of the club, and you have to come down and train and watch these guys train. And the performances probably haven't been there consistently, but that's what you do when you're young. You have inconsistent performances, and you go out there and you realise that you've got to play good every week, and that's something that I've been able to relay the message from the NRL is you don't get a week off. I mean, the larger squads over here have obviously got, two squads that they can play and they can rest blokes whenever they want, whereas, down here it's, you've got to get 17 on the field and you've got to teach them how to play week in, week out. So, there's a couple of guys here that could make in the NRL. I mean, one guy stands out is Kieran Dixon. He played fantastic for us on the weekend, and, he just probably needs a little bit more size, and he's definitely I'd like to see him in the NRL, so hopefully he's keen to maybe come to Penrith one day, because I'll definitely be singing his praises when I get back.
I was going to say, have you been tapping them up, tell them how good it is down under?
Well, I don't tell too many people. I want to keep the players for myself, because I want to win. So, look, it's been great. You look at another guy like Tommy Lee, a little bit older, been around for a while, definitely could make it in the NRL. These guys have all got potential. It's just a matter of consistently doing it week after week, and then you start to build a base, and then you start getting premiership gear here. That's 2 pounds.
Absolutely. And in terms of so many things I could ask you in terms of those developing players and the talent that they could have. What I know that when you first arrived, you were hungry for information. You've been scouting out Sheffield because that's the team who had the team that you're going to play in the Challenge Cup. What have you learnt about London? What did you think about the side or the sport before you arrived, and what do you think now? What's changed?
I think it's professional over here. I mean, probably the one difference is the game in London's probably not as big as up north, but I think the standard over here is pretty good. For it to keep going, I mean, England. It'd be nice for England to have a big year if you're English in the World Cup and really grow the game again and get on that sort of world stage and get all the press while being over here. But the game itself over here is pretty strong, and there's a lot of young talent. It'd be nice to sort of see a few more blokes, take the risk like the Burgesses and get out there and test themselves in the Australian game, and then you probably find that you get more youngsters coming up through the ranks instead of a lot of guys playing a lot of games over here. So it'd be definitely nice to see a few more Tommies out in the NRL and test themselves.
I'm going to ask you a few questions that I've had on Twitter in a second, but just one final one from me, and I guess it's probably the hardest question. How tough was that defeat to Wigan in the Challenge Cup? I know you came over here, you wanted to do something in the Challenge Cup. A Wembley appearance was probably the minimum you wanted. How much did that hurt?
It was probably the worst loss I've had in my professional career. I didn't see it coming. We'd prepared well all week, and but in saying that, we really didn't play well that day. Everything that went wrong sort of went wrong at once. So, but you learn from that. It would have been easy for us to throw in the towel after that and get beat by 50 4 days later by Leeds, but we didn't do that. So you got to look at the positives and realise that it is a game and you're still learning every week. So for me, it was nice to be able to mentally test myself and try and get myself back up to play well against Leeds. And in such a short time frame, we did that. So, like I said, we'd been building for the result on the weekend. And, you have dark days, but, you look at the NRL recently, it's not just, lopsided over here as well. There's been a few results back home that have, really taken, I guess, the fans in the NRL by surprise. So, it was embarrassing, but we're always learning, and you probably learn from that.
Let's just whiz through these questions on Twitter. Up the Dale saying, how good in relation to the NRL are the Broncos youngsters?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one because I've been asked that before, and what you've got to realise, the NRL is, probably Australia's, number one sport, and on the eastern coast anyway, and definitely some kids are in the system from 14, 15, and they're at one club for 6 years, and they'll know the plays, they'll know all the first graders and be in that system, whereas, London have got great juniors, but they've just had to plan first grade. They're still learning, Mike Bichet, like before, he's only played half a dozen games, 20 games.
Yeah.
And he's still learning, whereas these kids in the NRL might play 20 games over 2 years in a good team and a good system, and then they play regular first grade. They've been learning for 6 years.
I'm a bit limited for time, but let's try and squeeze these in. Dan says, what was it like making your Origin debut?
Yeah, great. Second to probably winning the premiership. Love the atmosphere, and disappointed not to play more, but happy that I did get a series in.
And Martin says, any chance that you were ever going to stay on at Broncos?
That I was ever going to stay on?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not this year. I think I'd signed a 4-year deal with Penrith, and I was very happy to do that. It'll have to wait and see whether I come back at the end of that contract. But definitely, if the body's feeling good, I'd love to come back and play for London one day.
I was going to say, Henry says, if you hadn't signed for Penrith, would you have considered staying on? I guess from what you're saying there, then you may well be back if the timing was right.
Yeah, I've looked at coming overseas before, and I'd been linked to Wigan and stuff like that. But I think this was a perfect fit for me, and I've still got some unfinished business in the NRL, and I've craved sort of being back in that system, and I guess testing myself and being able to do that week after week. So I'm looking forward to getting back into that, but I wouldn't rule out a move back overseas at the end of the career, that's for sure.
And I had a message from some bloke called Steve saying, who's your favourite Broncos media guy?
Yeah, definitely Steve. He's got his. I've told him to give me as much work as he can, and he's doing a great job for the club, and all the people that do work behind the scenes. They really work hard, and they don't get much raps for it, but I can definitely say that they've made my time easier, and I've had a great time over here.
So I've got a few of your questions in there that I'd been sent on Twitter. I mentioned as well on Twitter at the end of the interview how much of a great bloke Jamie Soward is and how he's been a credit to the Broncos, and a credit to himself really, and a credit to the NRL and Penrith, and the Dragons that he's played for and he's going to play for. Matthew saying on Twitter at Ian Ramsdale, he's been awesome on the pitch, but it's been great to watch him. And Anne saying as well, look forward to hearing the interview, thought he was a top bloke and very good with the fans. Matthew as well got in touch. I think he's a rugby league fan from down under. Said he was always a hit with the Dragons fans back in Australia. Great with the kids too. Great to hear he's done well. We definitely noticed him missing from the Dragons promos and also on the field this year. He did leave a huge hole. Matthew continued at Ian Ramsdale. He's looking forward to having him back. Would rather he was back in a Dragons jersey though, not a Panthers one. He says, LOL, laugh out loud, Matthew. Thank you for your messages. And also another message we had from... who sent me another message? Was it just from Matthew and from Anne, talking about the interview with Jamie Soward. If you want to send your thoughts anytime during the week on Twitter at Ian Ramsdale, or you can... email on rldownsouth@gmail.com. As you can tell, an unscripted Rugby League Down South programme with myself, Ian Ramsdale, for this week. Let's move on then to the Skolars before we get round to our mystery guest, which you'll find out very soon. I'm still undecided whether I'll put the name of him in the title of the podcast. I probably will, actually, so if you're listening, you can probably just go and see who it is. I'm not going to give too much away, really, but find out about that in a second. But it was a thrilling end to the championship season. I had my eye on while the Broncos were playing their final game of the year. Looking at the table, then Crusaders, they won at home to South Wales Scorpions to top the table by 2 points, so they get automatically promoted to the championship. Then the Oldham and Rochdale take the next 2 points because Skolars, they drew with Oxford 30 points apiece on the final day. Just couldn't do it. Just couldn't get the point which they needed. Or the 3 points I guess they needed, because Rochdale did get the points in their final game of the season with a victory, so it was a point difference decision for the Skolars, ending up fourth. So they travelled to Rochdale rather than hosting them in the playoffs, the way that things go. You'll hear us talk about the playoff structure in this following interview. And congratulations as well to Oxford and Hemel, finishing 6th and 5th respectively in the Championship 1 table in their debut season in Championship 1. Gloucestershire All Golds finishing at the foot of the table, 2 wins to the name this year in the league, but 4 bonus points gave them 12 points. They did finish slightly adrift at the bottom, one of the new clubs, but great to see Oxford and Hemel doing so well on the field. Gloucestershire All Golds, I'm sure they will continue to build. We've heard from them numerous times over the year, haven't we? So I'm sure that there was plenty more good stuff to come from them over the next year or two. But it was Skolars. We've done a lot with them, haven't we, over the years about their aspirations and what they'll do. And now they are going to play in their very first playoff ever. And they never got to this stage of the competition in the semi-professional ranks before. So a first ever playoff for the Skolars in their best ever season. A trip to Rochdale won't be easy, but the way that the structure works, they will get a second opportunity in the playoffs if they lose. You can see a great diagram on the Skolars website. Skolarsrl.com is the place to go. I've got to show that the Hemel will fancy their chances in the playoffs as well. But I've been talking to the Skolars chief executive, Hector McNeil, one of the very few people, one of the people who set up the Skolars back in 1995. I had a very good long chat with him. There's some really good stuff in here about London Rugby League in particular. And I asked him whether in 95 they ever thought that they'd be contesting a season in a semi-professional division and getting into the playoffs.
I don't think we ever had any pretensions of that, really, because I think we when we set up, it was really just a place for good quality ex-student internationals to play rugby league, and the sides on offer at the time were London Colonials and London Warriors, which were a Kiwi and an Aussie side. Both great pedigrees. I think they both got a Barla Cup semi-finals and stuff, but so that was really the aim. And actually, the scene was pretty well burgeoning at that time in London the South as well. So it was a pretty decent league to play in, and I think from year one as well, we qualified for the early rounds of the Challenge Cup and did pretty well in those as well. So they were all good times, really.
Well, I was going to say, you might not have thought about it back then, but definitely in the last few years, it's been something that's been at the forefront of the club's mind, and it must be great to now be in the playoffs.
Well, I think where it sort of realised to us was that when we sort of won everything there was in the amateur scene in the South, and then we actually applied and joined the National Conference League, which actually was only national in name up until we joined. I think there were only 2 southern teams that had been in private supply to us, was Hemel and Northampton, who I think Northampton lasted about a third of a season, which echoes from last year when they were supposedly going to join the league. But no, I think that obviously going from where we started in Chiswell Street in the city all the way to where we are today, it's a massively steep trajectory. And as I keep saying to people, look, 10 years out, we keep up that rate of ascent. Who knows where we're going to stop.
Rochdale, though, a trip away as well. You couldn't quite secure that victory on the final day of the season to get yourself a home tie. It's got to be tough, isn't it, up there?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very tough. I think the reality is, last couple of seasons we've not beaten them up there, and they've not beaten us at home. So losing that advantage, the lads fought so hard to get against Crusaders, where they got the point and just needed a win against Oxford was very disappointing, really. And I think that I was having a conversation with Joe today, Joe Maboo, and just mentioned to him that when we started the season, fourth place behind the three that finished above us was probably the minimum we would have expected, and a third place with Rochdale behind us would have been pretty acceptable. So, and to lose it on such the finest margins as well, I think was very difficult to stomach.
How disappointing was it to that respect then? Because like you say, you'd fought so hard against Crusaders to get that bonus point, to make sure it was all in your own hands, and then didn't quite come off in the end. I think I'm right in saying you were without Gareth Rayner for that game. Did that make a difference?
I think it did, but we had to make a decision. I mean, Gareth was quite clearly carrying a bad leg, a cork leg against Crusaders, and still had a fantastic game. But our view very much was on the game after the Oxford game, really, and sort of thinking, well, actually, especially the way the playoff format works as well, is the fact it's not a sudden death round whether we were fourth or third. That we get another bite of the cherry. So to have him a bit fresher and available was massively important to us, especially because, the last couple of weeks and into this round we've had no Broncos players either. So, that's been very difficult to cope with. But one thing I'll say is the lads that have gone out of the field have galvanised and, played for the badge really, and I think done the club credit.
I spoke to the coach of Hemel, Troy Perkins, a couple of weeks ago about the playoff structure itself. He said, he knows the structure well because he reminds him of when he was down in the NRL. I looked at it and was quite confused by it. Your general manager put a great diagram on your website this week with a sort of step-by-step guide as to who could play who and when. Very, very helpful. I replied to him saying, I thought the playoff structure was more like a load of squiggly lines, really. But it's quite good, isn't it, when you look at it and you break it down, in that the clubs that do get a second chance, like you say, you want to win this game, you want to put yourself in the next round, but if you don't, you still get another go.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think it sort of generates all sorts of emotions and I think pressures and thought processes in terms of, we were discussing today whether actually being, travelling up to Rochdale and playing them at home, is better for us than actually having them at home, on reflection, because, arguably the pressure's on them, to deliver that result, and, in some ways we're going up there without the pressure, whereas if we'd been at home, it would have been the other way around. So, and then you've always got that get out jail card in your pocket as well. So, it is an interesting structure, and to some extent for all of us uncharted territories as well. So trying to get your tactics and your thoughts about it are not the easiest either. But like you say, first looking at it, you look like you need a PhD in quant, to understand it. But when you get your head around it, it's not too bad.
It's all getting a bit serious now, isn't it? I've talked to Joe, I've talked to you over the years about, getting to the playoffs and wanting to be there. Now you're there, there's the potential of promotion to the Championship. Are you ready for that if it was to present itself?
I think we are, and I think why I think we are is because I think it's a big difference, but it's not a massive difference. There's a huge difference between becoming a new club and coming into Championship 1, and there's a massive difference from going to Championship to Super League. But I don't think the jump between Championship 1 and Championship is enormous. It's obviously a massive challenge. Both financially and commitment-wise, just from the sheer fact there's currently 14 clubs in that division and 9 in the one we're in now. And just the extra number of games, etc., is going to be a challenge. But I think that's something that no one would want to reject or walk away from. So I think that the challenges on the revenue side, on the playing side and such like are there to be seen. I think ground-wise, there's a lot of grounds floating around Championship which are no better and often worse than New River. So I'm pretty confident that the stadium itself is fine, particularly because of the amount of fans that I think we're going to attract there as well.
Yeah, obviously, there's a long way to go before we can talk about the potential of being in the Championship. But how much would it change the club? You've come a long way. You've now got, I think, over 200 members. You say at the club. The club are building. Would it change things drastically? Would you have to do things differently if you were in the Championship, or, as you say, is the step not too different?
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, we've got over 200 players at the club, not members.
Sorry,
so,
yeah.
You know, and that represents over 10 teams at the club. So I think that we're actually pretty unique as a professional club from that basis, because most professional clubs just run a reserve team at our level, and you know, some smattering of academy potentially, but not very often. You know, but you know,
does that make you more equipped then?
Our under 19s have won the league for the last 3 years. You know, they've got the treble this year. You know, we launched minis for the first time this year. So we you know, almost religiously believe in getting this pathway all the way through the club, and not just from a player perspective, but from a fan perspective, volunteer perspective, and you know, I think it's almost been a breakthrough year for us. So I think they're massively strong foundation stones for any sport, you know, but especially in rugby league, where times are hard and you know, revenues are tough. So having that bedrock and foundation is massive, and you know, give us 10 years of that, and I think, you know, we'll be very, very formidable.
I was just going to say, you know, where is your long-term future? You know, you say, you know, give us 10 years and look at the development that will happen. Where do you think that the London Skolars should be, or where do they sit, or where could they go? You know, people always trot out we want to be in Super League. Is that realistic for you?
Yeah, I think it is, to be honest. But I think a lot of it will be revolving around, you know, when I've got the time and effort to put into it. Really, I mean, we've got a very good board at the club. You know, but what I think it always needs this sort of thing is somebody who can really get it by the scruff of the neck and deliver it. You know, and you know, I've been fortunate enough to, you know, have been relatively successful business wise. You know, I'm still you know, mid-40s and you know, still got plenty of life in me business wise. So you know, I'm not ready yet to dedicate myself to rugby league, but at some point I'd like to give that a real crack and push it on, you know. And I'm a great believer in organic growth, so I wouldn't be a person who think you'd need to pump you know, massive amount of money to achieve get to the next level, even though obviously there would have to be some significant investment. But I think that, you know, if you get your business right and you've got something that people want to see. You know, and we've got a long history in Wood Green, you know, since '97. So you know, I think people know who we are, and you know, I think the better the product you can give them, the more people will come and watch. And you know, even just this year, you know, we've seen, you know, we've probably seen a doubling of our fan base, you know, from putting a pretty attractive team on the field, and you know, Howard Kramer and his army of people, you know, putting on a decent match day experience as well, and things like Capital Challenge and Friday Night Lights. So I think have really become fans' favourites now, really.
And I guess, you know, this could work out quite well. You know, if it's something that you fancy doing in the future and the business going the way that it is, you know, it's quite nice in a way that at a time of certain instability within certain areas of rugby league within London, you're talking about potential involvement for many more years to come. Yeah,
and I think that's important because, you know, I think that you know, we've probably tended to be overcautious than the opposite, and I think that's you know, held us in good stead really, and I think, you know, there's no, you know, accident that, you know, we've got a very consistent on-field and off-field team in terms of the amount, you know, the people who've been with us for a while now, you know, in terms of coaches, players, you know, the off-field staff. I mean, you know, Paul Foreman, you know, moved on recently, but you know, he'd been at the club for nearly 8 years, you know, and I think that to have that sort of loyalty and you know, quality of people kicking around for a time, you know, you're bound to edge forward each year, you know, and that's really what we've seen, you know. But as you say, if you step up to the next level, you know, you need a bit more than that, and I think obviously we'd have to look at that. But then the jump, you know, from Championship to Super League, I think is pretty enormous, you know, and I think it needs a huge amount more dedication. But obviously, you know, that would be a reasonably medium to long term plan anyway. So it wouldn't be something I think that would deliver overnight. You know, I mean, look at Featherstone. You know, they've been massively consistent last few years, but I think even they wouldn't argue that you know, they'd still have a lot to do to make that leap. And you know, I would never say the Skolars are anywhere near that level at this point, but I can certainly see us getting there.
Do you know, Hector, we could talk for the whole hour of this podcast. I'm pretty sure about all sorts of different topics, but I just want to finish off with Two final questions for you. One, we talk about the future of the sport in London, and London Broncos at the moment, the future looks uncertain. Did the concept of a ground shared redeveloping the New River, did it ever go anywhere? Because I know that was a suggestion, even if not an option.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely discussed. I mean, there was meetings held with Ralph Rimmer and Gus and myself and other people, and I think to some extent it was probably at the wrong time, for the discussions, but I think I think to some extent that option hasn't gone away. We're fortunate that what seems to be a reasonable solution has come to place at New River with a company called Fusion, who have taken over the long-term lease, and they want to use rugby league as a centrepiece to their development, and there's all sorts of ideas and plans around 4G pitches and better facilities. So we've got our fingers crossed with that, and maybe the good thing about that is it's fit for purpose for us then, but I still believe that rugby league has scarce resources in London, and the more we can be together and work together and get those synergies, the better, and it just seems ludicrous to me that you've got AFL staff in one part of London, Broncos in another, and us in where we are. Go back to what we're talking about with the Championship, I'm convinced, the vision and the strategy for London, should be twofold. One is that we have a team at each level of the professional game, and I would ring fence those three teams, to be honest, that Super League Championship 1, and I think we should be looking for legacy around facilities, and those two aims will be my vision, and I don't get it why the powers that be who sit in Leeds, and maybe that's half the problem, they sit in Leeds, they don't get it, this is the capital city probably of Europe, London, and arguably one of the top two cities in the world, and we seem to think we can lose that, and it won't be missed, and I think it's ludicrous, to be honest.
And just a final, I guess it's an open platform for you to tell us what you know. Everyone else is in the dark about what might happen at the Broncos, but do you know anything about potentially what may happen in the future with them? And on another note, do you think that if things were to go badly, and I'm not personally expecting that to be the case, I think I'm pretty sure to say that they're looking to try and continue, would you be in a position, do you think you'd pick up any Broncos fans if the worst was to happen?
Well, I think, look, I'm like you. I'm an optimist. The glass is half full for me, and I'm very confident in Gus and David. I think they're quality people, and I think they'll get it sorted out. And I think that the game will come to its senses and realise we can't lose Super League in London. But I think everybody accepts that the club's on a downward spiral, and something needs to happen to stop that. And my personal opinion is a move to Barnet or similar would be ideal for the club and give it a chance to rebirth and go again. I mean, I remember heady nights at the Stoop, against Canberra and Wigan, full houses and fantastic atmospheres, and there's no reason why that can't happen again. And you see the likes of Wakefield, Salford, Bradford, all these clubs struggling, and nobody ever seems to say a thing about them. But I think if we lose that here, then the game's going to take a massive step back, especially in World Cup year. We should be reaping the rewards for that at the end of the year, not looking back and wishing that we'd done something to save London. But I do believe there has to be some sort of rebirth, and as I said, I've got every confidence in Gus and David to sort that out.
Interesting stuff there from Hector McNeil, the Chief Executive of the London SKOLARS. Good luck to them away at Rochdale at the weekend. And some interesting thoughts as well from Hector about the development of the sport in the capital. Worth mentioning Henry Taylor, who sent me a message on Twitter. He set up a Google Plus supporters page for Broncos and the SKOLARS. If you fancy, I think you +1 it, don't you, in Google Plus? So if you fancy giving it a +1, do a search for the London Broncos and SKOLARS supporters page. I said to Henry that I'd give the page a shout. I've +1'd it. I'm following it. I think that's the official term. So if you're a member of the circles on Google Plus, go and check it out. Now then, to our final story of the day, and the best player in rugby league in this country at the moment, or certainly the best Englishman, Sam Tomkins. I got a call the other day to say that he was in northwest London. So I went to try and track him down. If you'd like to hear about my journey tracking him down, you can read about it in the latest edition of 4020 magazine, which comes out on the 13th of September. So the journey, the story, and how it all came about is in 4020 magazine. This is what happened when I actually got there, found Sam Tomkins, managed to sit him down for a good chat. We talked about all sorts, and here are his thoughts. Mr. Sam Tomkins. In fact, probably worth mentioning before we get into the interview that he was there promoting some sportswear and sports gear that he'd just signed a partnership with. So you'll hear all about that. And in fact, that was what we initially started talking about. The reason that he was where he was, and as I say, you can hear about exactly where he was and how I found him in 4020 magazine. But yeah, it was at Saracens ground, the Allianz Park, the old Barnet Copthall where Broncos used to play. But here he is sometimes talking about this new deal that he'd struck and other topics too.
They do everything. They do from protection to compression, rehabilitation, everything. When I first got introduced to the people at Shock Doctor, I just knew of Shock Doctor mouthguards. Just from being a kid, I'd always recognised the brand, and they're actually the biggest mouthguard company in the world. But I wasn't entirely sure exactly how much stuff they actually did. So I was surprised, and it's brilliant for me to be working with such a big global company.
Obviously, they do the full kit, so it's the mouth guards, but also the shorts, the top, the compression stuff. How important is it for a rugby league player to get the right sort of stuff and to get stuff that can, I guess, you talked about rehabilitation stuff that can actually help you physically? Yeah,
I think it's massively important. I think there's thousands and thousands of pounds every year spent by clubs on rehabilitation gear, on recovery processes of different recovery processes, which obviously all include compression garments. And then obviously there's your match day things, the sort of knee brace, ankle braces, basically a brace for every joint, and the big one, the mouth guard. So I'll be wearing pretty soon my bright orange Shock Doctor mouth guard.
And so, like you say, Shock Doctor is a big brand. Obviously, with you linking up with that big brand, I mean, does this go to show sort of how big sort of Sam Tomkins the brand is, and sort of where you're going with your particular brand?
Oh, I don't know about brand Sam Tomkins really, but for me to be involved with such big companies is brilliant. And it's nice that people like Shock Doctor want to get involved and give me an ambassador role. So I'm over the moon about it.
You must see the potential of the brand though as well, because people talk about Gareth Bale and stuff this week, and sort of like his brand of going to Real Madrid. As a sports person, if you do want to be successful, I mean, it's something that comes sort of hand in hand. And as much as you maybe might not sort of want to admit it, but there is a brand, Sam Tomkins, being one of the best rugby league players in the country.
Yeah, I think everyone's got their own thing going on, and their own brand and sponsorships are part of that. And every sportsman either has sponsorship or gets sponsorship. So I've got a few main sponsors that look after me in different areas, and it's good to say Shock Doctor's one of those now.
And how come you're doing this in London as well? I know a lot of the companies and stuff are based down here. Is that sort of what's brought you down to do this?
Yeah, it is. Well, Nigel Ray, who works with Saracens, being I think he's on the board. Well, he's got a part ownership in Shock Doctor over in the UK. So it was to come to the Saracens Stadium was the perfect location to a few pictures, bit of media, and then a bit of running around on the field as well.
What do you think of this place?
It's nice. It's a good stadium. Joel plays here, but I've never actually been watching him here. The only time I've seen him is he's been away from here. So it's good to come down and have a look at it. You're
going to come down and see him this year? They're setting up for the TV game this weekend.
Yeah, I will be. Any opportunity, I'll get down and watch him. It's quite difficult, obviously, when our season's on to get down and see him. But whenever I can, I will.
You've obviously come down to London. You come to a rugby union ground as well. As it kicks off questions about your future today?
Yeah, as you'd expect. I've been asked a few times what's happening, but my future is firmly with Wigan for the time being. We've had a very, very good couple of weeks, with the Challenge Cup victory only 2 weeks ago, and now moving on into the playoffs. It's good. It's exciting times for the club, and I've got in the back of my mind the international at the end of the year as well, the World Cup. So there's a lot going on at the moment.
Do you get bored of those questions, or do you get annoyed by those questions? I mean, how do you feel? It's followed you around for quite a while now, hasn't it, really? Yeah,
I don't get annoyed, but I certainly do get bored of it, because I'll give the same answer for the last 6 months. So
I keep seeing the quotes.
Yeah, the same answers have been given for the last 6 months, and they will be for the next 6, unless anything changes.
I mean, you're not expecting anything to change, I guess.
No. As I said, I'm concentrating on Wigan, and then if anything does come up, then you'll be the first to know.
How was the media down here today? Did they buy into it? What sort of questions you get from a rugby union media or anything like that?
Yeah. There was a lot of rugby union questions asking when I'm going to play with Joel, or will I be here for the 2015 World Cup and stuff like that. But it's what you'd expect, and nothing I've not dealt with before. So straight batted all the answers back for him.
And did you find that when you come to London, or when you sort of step outside that rugby league box, you notice that the image of the sport changes? It's something that I've done a lot covering the sport in London, in that when you step outside of the north and when you look at it from afar, people see rugby league a different way to the people that are involved in it all the time in the north. Yeah, they do. It seems,
a lot of journalists and things that are based down here will always ask, why is rugby league not very big? And you think, well, if you were on the M62 or somewhere, you'd realise just how big it is. But I think I'd love the sport to grow and spread straight throughout the country, and a successful London team would be a big part of that. But it's still growing, the sport, and we know we're still behind rugby union, and we're chasing, and we're trying to shut that gap. But it's pretty hard work.
Do you think it has the potential to rival rugby union seriously? Because, like you say, it's a way behind as a national sport at the moment, but you do see that passion, don't you? Everyone talks about it's the best game that's ever played whenever they see it. The fans that see it week in, week out really enjoy it. Does it have that potential to catch on across the country?
Yeah, I think we've got a great product in rugby league. It seems to be a sport that all sportsmen like. We have fans from football, fans from golfers, cricketers, Bradley Wiggins, there's so many different sports people who seem to love rugby league, and I think we have got a great product that needs to be exploited more than it is. But there's much cleverer people than me trying to do that job, and it's still not exactly where we want it yet. But I think it's going in the right way.
You got a big game, haven't you, this week, Thursday night, to decide third in the league?
Yeah, we do. Wigan Leeds is always a massive game. The structure of the playoffs now means the difference between, as long as you're in the top 4, doesn't really matter. 3rd and 4th are exactly the same, more or less. So we do want to win it. It's Wigan Leeds at the DW. There'll certainly be no punches held back, and everyone will be in that to win it, because I think building from this one game can take you straight through to the playoffs. Leeds are going to be there contending. I'm sure they'll be in the semis, if not the final, at the end of the year. So we'll be able to judge ourselves on this one big game.
I was going to say, you can't write Leeds off even when they finish 5th, can you, in recent years? In terms of the playoffs and how it's gone, you've obviously got the Challenge Cup under your belt now. How do you sort of approach the final game of the season, knowing that really it's not going to change too much? I guess if you've got a few bodies with a couple of knocks, you wouldn't risk them, but does it change anything else?
No, I think from the outside it's easy to look at it look at it in that way, but I think when you go out at the DW at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, it'll be a Thursday night this week, and the floodlights are on, the crowd's going mad, and there's nothing held back. We'll want to win that at all costs. There'll be nobody thinking about the playoffs or anything, certainly not for those 80 minutes, and then after that, then we'll be able to get excited about the playoffs.
And how big is that burn to win the title this year? Huddersfield have not dominated as such during the league, but have been the better side and got the league leaders shield. But how big is that burn inside you to get that Super League title?
It's huge. We're lucky enough we've already got one of the big 2 trophies. Huddersfield done well and got the league leaders, but the league leaders, as we've noticed before, doesn't mean a lot really. We've won that and nothing else, and saw it as a disappointing year. So we've got one of the big 2, but the idea of being able to do the double that's not been done for in the modern era. So we're looking forward to the challenge of that, and we're not gonna say the Challenge Cup's enough for us. We want to go on, kick on, win a grand final.
And is anything but that title for you and for Wigan a disappointment?
We'll be disappointed, yeah, if we don't get it, because I think we've got the squad to, we've got the mentality, we've got everything in place to do that. We've got ourselves in a good position in the playoffs, as long as we're in that top 4. So I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't. So if we don't get to the final, yeah, it certainly will be disappointing.
You probably wouldn't put your cards on the table and say which sides exactly are your main contenders, but are there contenders in that top 8 that you would be more afraid of than others?
Yeah, I think Leeds, Warrington and Huddersfield, the 3 of the top 4, along with us. I think 2 of the top 4 will be in the final, definitely.
So there he is, Sam Tomkins. Always good to catch up with him, and not often that you get the opportunity to talk to him in London as well. You just come, he mentioned, doesn't he, just see his brother playing for Saracens, but has never been to Allianz Park to see them, so maybe we'll see him down here this year. I'm sure it'll get some of the stories going. And while he didn't, in the interview, didn't say in particular that he was absolutely committing his future to Wigan, just said, nothing's going to change unless something changes, I think is pretty much how he said it, which wasn't really the ringing endorsement that many may hope. So I'm sure the stories of his future will rumble on over the next few months. But that's the way things are going to change in the next 6 months unless something changes. So I don't know. Read into that what you will. And as I mentioned before, you can read about my quest to find him as well in the latest edition of 4020 magazine. That's it then for this week's Rugby League Down South. Plenty stuff in there for you. Hope you've enjoyed it. I'm off to go to a festival, and I might even give you a special Skolars edition of this Rugby League Down South next week.